I stood frozen as my father jabbed his finger in my direction across our family kitchen during what was supposed to be a celebration dinner for my promotion. His face contorted with rage as he shouted, "Return the $60,000 or don't come back." The accusation hung in the air like poison. My sister Amber nodded in agreement, adding, "You took Mom's money. We all know it." Mom just sat there, eyes down, saying nothing. I felt my world collapsing around me. Without a word, I slowly placed the bank teller slips I'd been collecting for months onto the counter. Their faces went pale as they realized what I had discovered about their own financial secrets. The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silence that followed. I'm Christy Walker, 32 years old, a financial analyst with Marshall and Green Investment Group. I've always been the responsible one in our family. The one who saved her allowance while other kids blew theirs on candy. The one who worked through college to graduate debt-free. The one who checks in on Mom weekly and helps with her finances. Growing up, money was always tight in our household. Dad worked as a contractor with income that fluctuated seasonally, while Mom managed a small hair salon. They instilled strict financial values in us from an early age. Never spend what you don't have always. Save for emergencies, and family financial matters stay within the family. Money problems tear families apart. Dad would lecture whenever bill-paying time came around, his forehead creased with worry. You girls remember that. While both Amber and I received the same lessons, we responded differently. I embraced them, opening my first savings account at 12, with money from mowing lawns. Amber, 2 years older than me, seemed to view money as something that existed to be spent immediately. By high school, I was saving for college, while Amber was maxing out her first credit card on clothes and parties. Despite our differences, Mom and I developed a special bond around financial responsibility. As I grew older and developed my career in finance, Mom increasingly relied on me for advice. 3 years ago, when she turned 65, she asked me to help oversee her accounts. "I trust you, Christy," she said, signing the paperwork to add me as a joint account holder. "You understand these things better than anyone in the family." The arrangement worked well. I set up automatic payments for her regular bills, helped with tax preparation, and kept an eye out for any unusual activity. Dad seemed relieved to have some of the responsibility shifted away from him, as his contracting business demanded more attention. Amber, perpetually between jobs and apartments, occasionally made comments about me being the family treasurer, but it was said with apparent good humor. 3 months ago, during my regular review of Mom's accounts, I noticed something concerning. Small withdrawals, usually between $500 and $1,000, had been occurring regularly over the past 6 months. These weren't typical of Mom's spending patterns, and they added up to nearly $60,000. My first thought was identity theft. Mom was careful, but not especially tech-savvy. I immediately began investigating without alarming her. I requested withdrawal records from the bank, including times and locations. What I discovered was disturbing. The withdrawals were all made in person, at branches near Amber's apartment complex during Mom's salon working hours. I requested camera footage from the bank, citing the joint account authorization. The grainy images confirmed my suspicion. It was Amber making the withdrawals, using Mom's debit card and ID. My stomach churned. Why would Amber do this? Mom and Dad had always been more lenient with her struggles, offering financial bailouts when needed. Why resort to theft? Digging deeper, I discovered Amber had accumulated significant gambling debts at a casino just outside of town. I also learned she had a new boyfriend, Darren, who had a troubling financial history of his own. Failed businesses, tax liens, and a pattern of dating women who could support him financially. I planned to gather complete evidence before approaching my parents. The last thing I wanted was to create family division without absolute proof. When Mom called to invite me to a special dinner to celebrate your promotion, I thought nothing of it. Dad's contracting business had landed some big projects recently, and everyone seemed in good spirits. That evening, I dressed in my favorite navy blue dress and drove to my childhood home with a bottle of champagne ready to celebrate my new position as senior analyst. The moment I stepped through the door, I knew something was wrong. Mom's eyes were red from crying. Dad's posture was rigid with anger, and Amber was sitting at the kitchen table with a strange, satisfied expression. "We need to talk," Dad said, his voice cold. And that's when my world turned upside down. Accused of the very crime I was investigating by the people I trusted most. "This is ridiculous," I said, my voice shaking as I stared at my family across the kitchen table. The celebration dinner remained unprepared. No congratulations for my promotion, just open hostility. I would never steal from Mom. I've been helping manage her accounts to protect her money, not take it. "Then explain these," Dad slammed a folder onto the table. Inside were printed bank statements with the withdrawals highlighted in angry yellow. $60,000. "Christy, your name is on the account." Yes, as a joint account holder to help Mom, not to help myself. I looked desperately toward my mother, who sat with her hands folded, staring at the floral tablecloth. "Mom, you know I wouldn't do this. I've been trying to figure out who's been making these withdrawals." Mom finally looked up, her eyes showing conflict but her voice firm. "The evidence points to you, Christy. No one else had access except me, and I didn't take it." Amber found the discrepancies. Dad continued. "She was helping your mother balance her checkbook last week and noticed the pattern." I turned to my sister, who now wore an expression of wounded concern that I recognized from childhood. The same look she'd give our parents when trying to pin her misdeeds on me. "That's interesting timing," I said, struggling to stay calm. "Especially considering the withdrawals all happened at the branch near your apartment complex, Amber, during Mom's working hours, when she couldn't possibly have made them." Amber's face flushed. "Are you accusing me now? That's low even for you. Just because you work with money doesn't mean you know everything." She turned to our parents. "See, she's trying to deflect blame. Classic guilty behavior." Dad pounded his fist on the table, making the silverware jump. "Enough. We have the records, Christy. Your name is on the account. No one else could have taken that money except you or your mother, and she didn't do it." "What about the withdrawal slips? Have you seen those?" "The signature," I asked. "The bank said most were done with the debit card," and Amber interjected quickly. "No signature needed." I narrowed my eyes at her. "How would you know that level of detail unless you called the bank yourself? Mom wouldn't know to ask that." "That's enough." Dad stood up, pointing toward the door. "Return the $60,000 or don't come back to this house. We raised you better than this." I didn't take the money, I insisted, tears forming despite my efforts to remain composed. "Give me time to prove it." "You have 1 week," Dad said. "Return every penny or we go to the police." I looked at Mom one last time, hoping for some sign of doubt or support, but she turned away. Amber sat smugly, arms crossed over her chest. With shaking hands, I grabbed my purse and left without another word. In my car, I finally broke down sobbing until my throat hurt. How could my own family believe I would steal from them? And why was Amber so convincingly playing the concerned daughter when all evidence pointed to her? My best friend Taylor listened patiently that night as I poured out the whole story over her kitchen table. "This doesn't make sense," she said, pushing a cup of tea toward me. "Your family knows you better than this. Why would they jump to accusations instead of just asking you about it?" "That's what I can't figure out," I replied, wiping my eyes. Unless what Taylor prompted. Unless they know exactly who took the money and are covering for them." The realization hit me like a physical blow. Or worse, they're all in on it somehow. The next morning, I began a methodical review of all family financial records I had access to. As joint account holder on Mom's account, I could view her complete transaction history. What I found confirmed my suspicions and revealed something far worse. Dad's contracting business, Walker Construction, had been struggling for over a year. He'd been hit with several lawsuits from unhappy clients, claiming substandard work and suppliers had placed liens for unpaid materials. The business was drowning in debt with tax problems, compounding the issue. But the most damning evidence was a series of transfers from Mom's personal savings directly into Dad's business account, transfers that started right around the time the mysterious withdrawals began. They were small enough to stay under the radar, but added up to nearly $20,000. Dad knew about the missing money because he was responsible for part of it. And rather than admit his business was failing, he'd apparently decided to let me take the fall for all of it. I sat back in my chair, stunned by the betrayal. My own father was willing to accuse his daughter of theft to hide his financial problems. And based on the evidence, Amber was taking money too, but for different purposes. They were working separately, but had joined forces to frame me when they realized the missing funds might be discovered. The question now was, did Mom know what they were doing? Or was she an unwitting victim of all three of us? Her husband, her elder daughter, and now in her mind, her younger daughter too. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. I had 1 week before my father's ultimatum expired, and I intended to use every minute uncovering the truth. Monday morning, I called my office and requested emergency family leave. My boss, Diana, was concerned but supportive. "Take the time you need," she said. "Your work will be here when you get back." If only she knew how my professional reputation might soon be in tatters if my family's accusations went public. The financial industry runs on trust, and even unfounded allegations of theft could destroy my career. My first stop was Riverside Community Bank, where Mom had kept her accounts for over 30 years. Her friend Barbara had worked there nearly as long and had helped me set up the joint account access. I found her at her desk, reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed paperwork. "Christy, what a surprise." Barbara smiled, then frowned when she saw my expression. "Is everything all right, dear?" "Not really," I admitted, taking the seat she offered. "I need to talk to you about Mom's accounts. Something strange is happening." Over the next 20 minutes, I explained the situation without directly accusing anyone. Barbara's expression grew increasingly troubled. "I shouldn't be telling you this," she said, finally glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "But Margaret came in about 6 months ago and took out a reverse mortgage on your parents' home. She specifically asked that no paperwork be sent to the house and that Frank not be notified." I blinked in surprise. A reverse mortgage. But why would she need that kind of money? Their house was almost paid off. Barbara hesitated. She mentioned medical expenses. When I asked if everything was okay, she just said she was getting her affairs in order and changed the subject. She lowered her voice further. "Christy, in my experience, when people suddenly need that kind of money and are secretive about it, it's often because of a serious health issue." My heart sank. Could Mom be sick without telling any of us? It would explain her withdrawn behavior lately, the weight loss I'd attributed to her new diet, the fatigue she blamed on working too much. "One more thing," Barbara added, "about those withdrawals you mentioned. I wasn't working those days, but my colleague Jerry handled several of them. He mentioned that Margaret's daughter was helping her with errands. We all assumed it was you given your joint account status, but Jerry described someone who sounds more like Amber." I thanked Barbara for her help and left with even more questions than I'd arrived with. My next step was clear. I needed to talk to Mom's doctor. Legally, I couldn't access her medical records without permission, but I could at least confirm if she had appointments that aligned with the days money was withdrawn. At Westside Medical Group, I asked the receptionist to confirm my mother's next appointment, claiming I needed to drive her. After checking the system, she replied Dr. Wilson's office tomorrow at 2:30. It's her regular monthly follow-up. Monthly follow-up. For what I thanked her, and left before my expression could betray my confusion. Back in my apartment, I began creating a comprehensive timeline of the withdrawals, the transfers to Dad's business account, and what I now knew about Mom's secret reverse mortgage and medical appointments. The picture emerging was disturbing. My phone rang. Taylor calling to check on me. "Have you told your boss what's really going on?" she asked, after I updated her on my discoveries. "Not yet. I'm hoping to resolve this before it affects my job." "Christy, you might need professional support on this. Your family is effectively committing fraud and trying to pin it on you." I know, I sighed. But I can't just turn them in without understanding the full picture. Mom might be seriously ill. Dad's business is failing, and Amber. I trailed off. "Amber is taking advantage of both situations." Taylor finished for me. "Have you looked into what she's been doing with the money?" That was my next task. Using social media and connections from our hometown, I began piecing together Amber's activities over the past 6 months. The picture wasn't pretty. Beyond the gambling, I'd already discovered Amber and her boyfriend Darren appeared to be running small-time investment scams, targeting elderly people at the casino, promising guaranteed returns through exclusive real estate, deals that didn't exist. As I dug deeper, my phone buzzed with a text from Diana. "My boss. Need to talk when you have a moment. Important." With a sense of dread, I called her back immediately. "Christy," Diana said, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "I received a strange call today from someone asking about your handling of client funds. They didn't leave a name, but they implied you might be involved in some financial improprieties." My stomach dropped. "What? That's completely false? Who would?" I stopped. The answer obvious. Amber, or perhaps Dad, was trying to preemptively destroy my credibility. "I know it's not true," Diana assured me. "Your work is impeccable, but I thought you should know someone's making these claims. Is there something going on I should be aware of?" I took a deep breath and told her everything. To my relief, she believed me and offered both personal support and the company's legal resources if needed. "Document everything," she advised. "And Christy, don't face this alone. These are serious allegations in both directions." That evening, I received multiple messages from extended family and hometown friends, all variations of the same theme. "Is it true? Did you really steal from your mother?" The rumors were spreading. Whatever was happening with my immediate family, they were determined to destroy my reputation before I could expose them. As I was sorting through bank statements late into the night, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stay out of family business if you know what's good for you." Shortly after, another text arrived, with a photo of my apartment building's parking lot, my car clearly visible. Someone was watching me. The stakes had just gotten higher. The next morning, I received an unexpected call from my mother's sister, Aunt Judy. "Christy, what's going on? Your father called saying you've stolen money from your mother, but that doesn't sound like you at all." "It's not true, Aunt Judy," I said, relieved that at least someone was questioning the narrative. "In fact, I've discovered something troubling. Has Mom mentioned anything to you about health problems?" Aunt Judy went silent for a moment. She asked me not to say anything, but given the circumstances. "Margaret was diagnosed with early-stage lymphoma 4 months ago. She's been undergoing treatment at Westside Cancer Center. She didn't want to worry any of you until she knew the prognosis." The final piece clicked into place. Mom's secret medical condition explained the reverse mortgage, but not why she would let Dad and Amber accuse me of theft, unless... "Aunt Judy, you still have Mom's old jewelry box, don't you? The one with Grandma's pieces she was saving for me?" "Yes, she brought it over a few weeks ago for safekeeping, while your father renovates the spare room." "Why?" My heart sank. "I need to come see you. Right away." An hour later, Aunt Judy showed me the antique wooden jewelry box containing our family heirlooms, pieces dating back generations that Mom had always promised would come to me someday. The collection was worth far more in sentimental value than monetary terms, but at current market rates, easily $30,000. "Dad and Amber are planning to sell these," I explained to my shocked aunt. "They're desperate for money and willing to do whatever it takes to get it, including framing me for theft and destroying my reputation." "But why would Margaret go along with this?" Aunt Judy asked, bewildered. "I don't think she knows the full extent of their plan," I replied. "She's vulnerable right now, scared about her diagnosis. They're taking advantage of that." As I was driving home from Aunt Judy's house, my phone rang. It was Dr. Wilson's office confirming Mom's appointment for the following day. I thanked them and made a decision. I would confront my mother directly away from Dad and Amber's influence. The truth had to come out no matter how painful it might be. The waiting room at Westside Medical Group was quiet when I arrived 20 minutes before Mom's appointment. I chose a seat with a clear view of the entrance, my heart pounding with anxiety. When Mom finally walked in, she froze upon seeing me. "Christy," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "What are you doing here?" I stood up, taking in her appearance with fresh eyes. The slight yellowish tint to her skin, the way her clothes hung loosely on her frame, the fatigue evident in the shadows beneath her eyes. How had I missed the signs? "We need to talk," I said quietly. "Alone without Dad or Amber influencing what you say." She glanced nervously toward the door, then back at me. I can't miss this appointment. I'll wait. We can talk after. She nodded reluctantly and checked in with the receptionist. When her name was called 30 minutes later, she gave me one last uncertain look before disappearing into the examination room. I spent the next hour rehearsing what to say, trying to balance my hurt and anger with compassion for her medical situation. When she finally emerged, Dr. Wilson at her side, I stood up. Mrs. Walker needs to rest after today's treatment, the doctor said kindly. Are you her daughter? Yes, I replied. I'm driving her home. Mom didn't contradict me, and we walked silently to my car. Instead of heading toward my parents' house, I drove to a small park nearby and parked in the shade of an oak tree. I know about the lymphoma, I said, gently turning to face her. Aunt Judy told me. Mom's eyes filled with tears. I didn't want anyone to worry. The prognosis is good with treatment, but the treatments are expensive even with insurance I finished for her. So you took out a reverse mortgage on the house without telling Dad. She looked up startled. How did you know about that? Barbara at the bank told me. Mom, I'm a financial analyst. Did you think I wouldn't investigate when I was accused of stealing $60,000? Her hands twisted nervously in her lap. Christy, you have to understand. What I understand, I interrupted, is that Dad's business is failing. Amber has gambling debts and is running investment scams with her boyfriend, and you're secretly battling cancer. What I don't understand is why you're letting them accuse me of theft when you know I didn't take that money. Mom's face crumpled. I suspected it was your father and Amber taking the money, but I couldn't prove it. When they found the discrepancies and blamed you, I didn't know what to do. So you said nothing. Let them throw me out of the house and threaten to go to the police. The hurt in my voice was unmistakable. I thought you would be strong enough to handle it, she whispered. You've always been the strong one, the smart one. I knew you'd figure it out, and meanwhile, I could get my affairs in order without everyone falling apart. I stared at her in disbelief. You were using me as a scapegoat while you sorted things out. Do you have any idea what this has done to me? My reputation, my career, my trust in my own family? I'm getting the house and finances in order before I tell everyone about my condition, she explained, tears streaming down her face. The doctors are optimistic, but if something goes wrong, I needed to make sure everything was protected. Your father would lose everything if he knew how bad his business situation really is. And Amber, I asked, what about her stealing from you to fund her gambling and her boyfriend's scams? Mom looked genuinely shocked. Gambling scams, I knew she was taking some money for emergencies, but I had no idea. They're planning to sell your heirloom jewelry, I told her. The collection you promised would come to me someday. That's why you gave it to Aunt Judy for safekeeping, isn't it? You suspected something. She nodded miserably. I heard your father and Amber talking about liquidating assets when they thought I was asleep. I didn't know exactly what they meant, but I wanted to protect the family pieces. Mom, I said, my voice breaking, I love you, and I'm so sorry about your diagnosis. But I cannot and will not be the sacrificial lamb for this family's dysfunction. Dad and Amber are taking advantage of your illness, and you're letting them destroy my reputation in the process. Please, Christy, she begged, grasping my hand. Just give me a little more time. I'll fix everything once my treatment cycle is complete. I promise. I gently withdrew my hand. I can't wait. The damage is already being done. They've contacted my workplace, spread rumors to the extended family, and someone's watching my apartment. This has gone too far. I drove her home in silence, both of us lost in our thoughts. As I pulled into their driveway, she turned to me. Whatever you do, please remember they're still your family, she said softly. Family doesn't do this to each other, I replied, watching her walk slowly to the front door. When I returned to my apartment that evening, I immediately sensed something was wrong. The door was unlocked, though I was certain I'd locked it that morning. Inside my normally tidy living space had been methodically searched. Drawers slightly ajar, papers rearranged, my laptop moved from where I'd left it. Most importantly, the external hard drive where I'd been storing copies of all my evidence was missing, along with the folder of printed bank statements and withdrawal receipts. With shaking hands, I called the police. The responding officers were sympathetic but not particularly hopeful. No sign of forced entry. Nothing of obvious value taken, the officer noted. Could it have been someone with a key maintenance staff? Maybe a friend or relative? I knew exactly who it was, but I had no proof. And with my primary evidence gone, I felt utterly defeated. After the police left, I collapsed onto my couch and truly hit bottom. For the first time, I seriously considered walking away from my entire family, changing my name, moving to another state, starting fresh without the weight of their betrayal. Taylor arrived an hour later with takeout food and unwavering support. You could walk away, she acknowledged as I picked at my lo mein. No one would blame you after what they've done. Part of me wants to, I admitted. But then they win. Dad and Amber get away with theft and fraud. Mom continues hiding her illness instead of getting proper support. And I lose my family and possibly my career. So what's the alternative? I set down my food, a new resolve forming. I fight back, not with accusations and threats like they've done, but with irrefutable evidence and consequences. If they want to play dirty, they're about to learn they chose the wrong person to frame. Taylor smiled. That's the Christy I know. What's the plan? First, I said, pulling out a notebook, we create a comprehensive record of everything that's happened with timeline and supporting documentation. They stole my copies, but the originals still exist at the bank, the doctor's office, and other official sources. Then what? Then I stop playing defense and start playing offense. It's time to call in professional help. That night I barely slept, but for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a sense of purpose, replacing my despair. My family had no idea what was coming. By morning I had formulated a methodical plan of action. As a financial analyst, I approached problems with logic and evidence rather than emotion. It was time to apply those same principles to my personal crisis. My first call was to Marcus Harding, a former college classmate who now worked as a private investigator specializing in financial fraud. This is complicated, he said after I explained the situation. Family financial fraud cases are messy because the relationships cloud the evidence. But if what you're saying is true, we can definitely build a case. I need undeniable proof, I told him. The kind that can't be explained away or minimized. Let me make some calls, he replied. In the meantime, secure whatever evidence you still have. Based on the break-in, they may try again. Next, I contacted Westside Community Bank's fraud department and scheduled a meeting for that afternoon. As a joint account holder on Mom's account, I had the legal right to report suspicious activity. Before the meeting, I made one more crucial call. To Walter Simmons, my father's business partner at Walker Construction. We weren't close, but we had always been cordial at company events. Christy, this is unexpected, Walter said when he answered. I need to speak with you about the business, I said carefully. Specifically about some financial irregularities I've discovered. A long pause followed. How much do you know? He finally asked. Enough to be concerned. I'd rather discuss it in person. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop halfway between our locations. When I arrived, Walter looked tired and anxious with new gray in his beard since I'd last seen him. Your father doesn't know I'm meeting you, he said immediately. Things have been strained between us lately. Because he's been moving money from my mother's accounts into the business without your knowledge or consent, I stated directly. Walter's shoulders sagged. So you do know? Yes, I discovered unauthorized transfers about 2 months ago. When I confronted Frank, he claimed Margaret had agreed to invest in the business to help us through a rough patch. I had no reason to doubt him until what I prompted, until I found discrepancies in our client billing records. Jobs being double-billed, materials charged at inflated rates. Small amounts individually, but they add up. I confronted Frank again last week, and he blamed our new bookkeeper. I nodded, pieces falling into place. But you checked, and the bookkeeper wasn't responsible. Exactly. It was all Frank using the company accounts like a personal piggy bank. He ran a hand through his thinning hair, 30 years of friendship and business partnership, and now this. I've been gathering evidence before deciding whether to dissolve the partnership or press charges. I need to see that evidence, I told him. My father and sister are trying to frame me for stealing the very money they've been taking from my mother. Walter looked genuinely shocked. I knew Frank was desperate, but to accuse his own daughter, he shook his head. I'll share what I have on one condition: that we coordinate how this information comes to light. The business employs 12 people who depend on their paychecks. I'm not looking to destroy the company or the innocent employees, I assured him. I just want the truth exposed and my name cleared. With Walter as an unexpected ally, I headed to my meeting at the bank. The fraud investigator, a woman named Teresa Delgado, listened attentively as I laid out the pattern of withdrawals and my suspicions. We take elder financial abuse very seriously, she said when I finished. Even more so when it involves family members. I'm not sure my mother sees herself as being abused, I admitted. She seems to know about some of the withdrawals, at least the ones my father made. Authorization is key here, Teresa explained. Did she explicitly authorize all these transactions? And was she under duress or undue influence when she did so? Also, did she authorize your sister's withdrawals, which were made using her ID and card? These were exactly the right questions, and with Teresa's help, we began the process of obtaining the bank's surveillance footage and transaction records. The bank also placed a temporary fraud alert on my mother's accounts to prevent further unauthorized withdrawals. My next stop was Westside Medical Center, where I met with their patient advocate. Though I couldn't access Mom's medical records directly, I could and did revoke any medical power of attorney documents that might have been established for my father or sister. As next of kin without documented restrictions, I was able to file my own power of attorney for healthcare decisions contingent on my mother's potential incapacitation. This is unusual, the advocate noted. Typically, families work together on these matters. My family situation is complicated at present, I explained. My mother has been hiding her condition from most of us, and I'm concerned about decisions being made without full information. That evening, Marcus called with his initial findings. Your sister's boyfriend, Darren Conley, has quite a history, he reported. 3 prior arrests for fraud, though only 1 conviction. He specializes in what we call affinity fraud, targeting specific groups with investment scams. Lately, he's been working the senior crowd at Golden Palms Casino. That fits what I suspected, I said. Any direct connection to the money from my mother's account? Not yet, but I'm following the trail. Here's something interesting, though. Your father consulted with bankruptcy attorney Louis Jennings last month. No filing yet, but the consultation suggests he's considering it. Bankruptcy would explain Dad's desperate measures. If Walker Construction went under with its current debt load, he could lose everything. The house, retirement savings, any assets in his name. The next crucial step was documenting and securing the family heirloom jewelry collection. With Aunt Judy's permission, I hired a certified appraiser to catalog and value each piece, creating an official record of what existed and its worth, both monetary and historical. The total came to nearly $45,000 more than I had estimated. These pieces tell your family's story, the appraiser commented carefully, examining a Victorian locket containing a miniature photograph of my great-great-grandmother. The provenance adds significant value beyond the materials, which is exactly why they shouldn't be sold to cover gambling debts and business failures, I replied. By day 5 of my week-long ultimatum, I had assembled a compelling body of evidence, bank records, showing the pattern of withdrawals by Amber and transfers by Dad's surveillance footage, clearly identifying Amber using Mom's ID, medical records confirming Mom's condition and treatment costs, business documents from Walter showing Dad's mismanagement and fraud, and the jewelry appraisal establishing the collection's value and provenance. I made one final move before confrontation. I contacted my father's attorney, James Wilcox, requesting an urgent meeting. I represent Frank Walker, not you, he reminded me when I arrived at his office. Anything you say is not privileged. I'm aware, I replied calmly, placing a folder on his desk. This contains evidence that my father and sister have committed financial fraud against my mother and then attempted to frame me for it. It also shows that my father has been defrauding his business partner and potentially committing tax fraud. The attorney's expression remained neutral as he skimmed the documents, but I noticed his posture stiffen. "Why bring this to me?" he asked finally. "Because tomorrow is my father's deadline for me to return $60,000 I never took or face police charges. Before that happens, I wanted you to be aware of what would come to light in any legal proceeding." He closed the folder and removed his glasses. "I'll need to discuss this with my client." Of course, I stood to leave. "You should also know that I've secured the family heirloom collection that they were planning to sell, and I've placed fraud alerts on all of my mother's accounts. The window for covering this up has closed." As I reached the door, Wilcox spoke again. "Miss Walker, for what it's worth, I'll be withdrawing as your father's counsel after our conversation. There are lines I won't cross professionally." It was the first indication that the house of cards was beginning to collapse. That evening, as I made final preparations for the confrontation to come, I received an urgent call from Taylor. "Your mother's in the hospital," she said. "St. Luke's emergency department. Your aunt just called me looking for you." My heart raced as I grabbed my keys. "Did she say what happened?" "Something about collapsing after an argument with your dad. Christy, be careful. The situation is becoming volatile." I thanked her and rushed to the hospital, unaware that the final confrontation would happen sooner than I'd planned in the most unexpected of settings. St. Luke's Hospital emergency waiting room was harshly lit and nearly empty when I arrived. Aunt Judy rose immediately from a molded plastic chair, her face etched with worry. "She's stable," Aunt Judy said before I could ask. "Severe dehydration and exhaustion compounded by her treatments. The doctor says they'll keep her overnight for observation." "What happened?" I asked, looking around. "Where's Dad and Amber?" "In the family consultation room with the doctor. They got here before me." She lowered her voice. "There was a huge fight at the house. Margaret finally told Frank about her diagnosis, and apparently it didn't go well." A nurse approached us. "Are you Christy Walker? Your mother is asking for you. Room 3. I followed her through the double doors, my heart pounding. Mom lay in the hospital bed looking frighteningly frail, an IV dripping fluids into her arm. Her eyes, however, were clear and determined. I told him everything she said when we were alone. About the cancer, the reverse mortgage, my suspicions about the money. It all came pouring out. I took her hand. "How did he react?" "Not well initially. There was yelling accusations. That's when I felt dizzy and collapsed. The paramedics came, and once we were here," she managed a weak smile. "Hospitals have a way of putting things in perspective. He's scared, Christy. Scared of losing me. Scared of losing everything he's built." "That doesn't excuse what he and Amber have done," I said gently. "Or what they tried to do to me." "No, it doesn't. And I won't let them continue." She squeezed my hand with surprising strength. "I made a mistake trying to protect everyone by saying nothing. It's time for the truth. All of it." The door opened, and Dad entered, followed by Amber. Both stopped short upon seeing me. "What is she doing here?" Amber demanded. "Dad, you said she had until tomorrow to return the money." "I'm here because Mom asked for me," I replied calmly, "and because it's time to end this charade." Dad looked older than I'd ever seen him, his confident posture replaced with the stooped shoulders of a defeated man. "Christy, this isn't the place." "It's exactly the place Mom interrupted. Neutral ground where none of you can storm out or avoid the truth." "Frank, Amber, sit down. We're going to have the conversation we should have had months ago." To my surprise, they complied, taking seats on opposite sides of the bed. A hospital social worker appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand. "Mrs. Walker, I'm Elaine Mercer. Dr. Patterson asked me to check if you need any support services during your stay." "Perfect timing," Mom said. "We could use an objective witness for a family discussion about financial matters. Would you mind staying?" The social worker looked surprised, but nodded professionally. "If everyone consents." With the social worker present, I laid out everything I had discovered over the past week. The withdrawals made by Amber, using Mom's ID, the transfers Dad had made to his failing business, the plans to sell the family heirlooms, and their coordinated effort to blame me for all of it. I have bank surveillance footage, transaction records, business documents provided by Walter Simmons, and testimony from multiple witnesses, I concluded. This isn't speculation. It's documented fact. Dad stared at the floor, saying nothing. Amber, however, went on the offensive. You've always been jealous of me, she spat. Always trying to make yourself look perfect while making me look bad. So what if I borrowed some money? Mom would have given it to me if I'd asked. $60,000 isn't borrowing, Amber, I replied evenly. It's theft. And no, Mom wouldn't have given you that much money for gambling and to fund Darren's investment scams. What investment scams? Mom asked sharply. I explained what Marcus had uncovered about Darren's criminal history and current activities. With each detail, Amber's defiance visibly crumbled. He said those charges were mistakes, she mumbled. He said the investments were legitimate. And the seniors who lost their savings, were they mistakes too? I asked. Dad finally looked up. I didn't know about any of this. About Darren, about the gambling. I only knew money was disappearing, and when Amber found those withdrawals. You saw an opportunity, I finished for him. Frame me for all of it, solve both problems at once. Your business failures and Amber's theft. The business isn't failing, he insisted, a flash of his old pride returning. It's a cash flow issue. The Westridge project will turn everything around once it's complete. Walter showed me the books, Dad. There is no turning it around. You've been falsifying billing records and misappropriating funds. Even if the Westridge project were profitable, which it won't be, with the materials substitutions you've made, it wouldn't cover the existing debt. The hospital room fell silent as the implications of my words sank in. The social worker who had been taking notes looked up. Mrs. Walker, given what I'm hearing, I should inform you that financial exploitation of seniors is something we're mandated to report. Mom nodded slowly. I understand, but before any reports are filed, I'd like to try handling this within the family, with proper safeguards in place. She turned to Dad and Amber. I've loved you both through good times and bad, but what you've done crosses every boundary. Stealing from me was bad enough. Trying to destroy Christie's reputation and career is unforgivable. Dad began to protest, but Mom held up her hand. I'm not finished. Frank, the business is over. You need to sell what assets remain, pay your debts honestly, and face the consequences of your actions. Amber, your relationship with Darren ends today, and you will enter treatment for gambling addiction. And if we refuse, Amber challenged, though her voice lacked conviction. I answered before Mom could. Then the evidence goes to the police, the bank's elder fraud unit, the business licensing board, and the district attorney. Your choice. Dad's shoulders slumped further. Margaret, I never meant for this to happen. When I saw the business failing after 30 years of building it, I panicked. I just needed time to turn things around. And when you found out I was sick, that I might be dying, was framing our daughter still your solution then? Mom's voice was quiet, but cutting. Dad had no answer, his eyes filling with tears. Amber looked between them, her defiance crumbling. Is it true? Are you dying, Mom? The prognosis is good with treatment, Mom replied. But I needed the reverse mortgage to cover costs our insurance wouldn't. I was trying to handle it quietly to protect everyone. By suffering alone, I asked gently. That's not protection, Mom. That's martyrdom. Mom reached for my hand again. I see that now. I thought I was being strong, but I was just being stubborn. Like someone else I know. She smiled weakly at me. As the conversation continued, painful truths emerged. Dad admitted to using Mom's funds to cover business debts, thinking he could replace the money before she noticed. Amber confessed that what started as borrowing for emergencies escalated once she became involved with Darren and his schemes. The social worker, still present, finally spoke up. This family clearly has significant issues to resolve, but I'm hearing the beginnings of accountability. Would you be open to family counseling as part of the resolution process? To my surprise, Dad nodded immediately. Yes, whatever it takes. As the conversation wound down, a nurse came to inform us that visiting hours were ending. Mom asked for a moment alone with me before I left. There's something else you should know, she said once we were alone. I changed my will last month. If something happens to me, the house and everything else would go to you, not your father or Amber. I stared at her in shock. Mom, that's going to cause even more conflict. It's not permanent, she explained. It's leverage to ensure they follow through on getting help and making amends. Once I see real change, I can revise it again. She squeezed my hand. I should have trusted you from the beginning, Christy. I'm so sorry for what you've been through. As I left the hospital that night, I felt emotionally drained, but also strangely hopeful. The truth was finally out, painful as it was. The real work of healing, both Mom's health and our family's deep wounds, was just beginning. 1 year later, I stood in the kitchen of my childhood home, arranging a fruit platter for our family dinner. So much had changed since that confrontation in the hospital room. With Mom's blessing and legal authorization, I had taken control of the family's finances during her recovery. The process was neither quick nor easy, but it was necessary for everyone's well-being. Dad's construction company couldn't be saved in its original form. With Walter's cooperation, they sold the company's assets to a larger contractor who kept on most of the employees. The proceeds went to settling debts and tax obligations. Dad was fortunate to avoid criminal charges thanks to his full cooperation and Walter's surprising compassion. 30 years of friendship counts for something Walter had told me. I want him held accountable, not destroyed. Dad now worked as a site supervisor for the company that bought them out. A significant step down from owner, but a job that used his skills without the pressures of running a business. The humility of the position seemed to agree with him, bringing back the more patient, thoughtful man I remembered from childhood. Amber's journey was rockier. Her initial resistance to treatment for gambling addiction gave way only after Darren was arrested for fraud in connection with his investment schemes. The betrayal of discovering he had other women in neighboring towns, all providing him with money and places to stay, finally broke through her denials. 6 months of intensive therapy and Gamblers Anonymous meetings had helped her recognize the patterns of risk-seeking behavior that had defined much of her adult life. She was now working part-time at a local garden center while taking accounting classes at community college, ironically developing the very financial skills she had once mocked me for pursuing. Mom's health battle had been grueling but successful. After completing her treatment protocol, her most recent scans showed no evidence of disease. The doctors were cautiously optimistic about her long-term prognosis. The experience had changed her, making her both more vulnerable and more forthright. She no longer kept painful truths hidden to protect others. As for me, I had emerged from the ordeal with unexpected professional growth. Diana had been impressed with my financial forensic work and created a new position for me, leading a specialized team focused on detecting financial fraud patterns for our institutional clients. You have a unique perspective now, she had said. You understand both the technical and psychological aspects of financial deception. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Aunt Judy arriving early with a homemade apple pie. Where's everyone else? She asked, looking around the quiet house. Dad and Mom are picking up Amber, I explained. They should be here soon. She studied my face. How are you feeling about tonight? It's almost exactly a year since. Since everything fell apart, I'm okay. I smiled reassuringly. Better than okay, actually. Family therapy has helped a lot. The weekly family counseling sessions had been challenging but transformative. Dr. Larson, our therapist, had a gift for cutting through deflections and excuses to the heart of issues. Under her guidance, we had begun the slow process of rebuilding trust through consistent accountability and honest communication. Healing happens in layers, Dr. Larson often reminded us. There's no shortcut through the difficult emotions. When the rest of the family arrived, I was struck by how different the atmosphere felt from that disastrous celebration dinner a year ago. There was still some awkwardness, but it was tempered by genuine effort from everyone. Dad greeted me with a warm hug. The house looks great, Christy. Thanks for hosting. It's still weird to me that you're the homeowner now, Amber commented, as she set down a small gift bag on the counter. After Mom's recovery, we had collectively decided to sell the family home to me at a fair market price. The arrangement allowed Mom and Dad to pay off the reverse mortgage and remaining debts while staying in the house they loved. I had relocated my apartment to the converted garage, giving everyone appropriate independence while keeping the family connected. Not exactly how I planned to buy my first house, I replied with a smile, but it's worked out well for everyone. During dinner, conversation flowed more naturally than it had in years. We talked about Mom's garden plans, for spring Dad's new woodworking hobby, and Amber's progress in her classes. The undercurrent of financial anxiety that had shadowed our family gatherings for so long was noticeably absent. After dessert, Mom cleared her throat. I have something I'd like us all to see. She retrieved a familiar wooden box from the living room cabinet, the family jewelry collection that had been safely stored at Aunt Judy's during the crisis. I think it's time these pieces came home, she said, opening the lid, and time we remembered the stories that go with them. One by one, she removed the precious items. Great-grandmother's cameo, brooch, grandfather's pocket watch, the Victorian locket with its tiny photograph, and dozens of other pieces collected across generations. These aren't just things, Mom said, handling each with reverence. They're our history. The people who owned them faced their own challenges. Wars, economic depressions, personal tragedies, but they persevered. Just like we're doing now. She picked up the locket and handed it to me. This was meant to come to you eventually. I think now is the right time. As I held the delicate gold oval warm from Mom's hands, I felt a connection not just to the distant ancestor pictured inside, but to my own family sitting around the table. Imperfect, wounded, but still mine. I've learned something important this past year, I said, looking at each of them. Wealth isn't measured in dollars or possessions. Real wealth is having the courage to face difficult truths and rebuild what truly matters. Trust, integrity, compassion. Dad nodded, uncharacteristic tears in his eyes. I lost sight of that somewhere along the way. Thought I could fix everything myself, protect my pride by hiding problems. Instead, I nearly destroyed what mattered most. Amber, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. I always thought you were the perfect one, Christy. That's why it was so easy to let you take the blame. I resented how responsible. And together you always seemed. I'm far from perfect, I assured her. But I've learned that being strong doesn't mean handling everything alone. It means knowing when to ask for help and when to stand firm. As the evening wound down and everyone prepared to leave, Mom pulled me aside. You know, when I changed my will last year, it was out of desperation and fear. I've updated it again recently. I tensed slightly. Oh, she smiled reassuringly. Nothing dramatic, just more balanced, now that we're healing. But I wanted you to know something. Whatever material inheritance eventually comes to you and Amber, you've already received my most important legacy, which is, I asked, the strength to stand up for truth, even when it's painful, to fight for what's right without becoming bitter. I see that in you, and it makes me prouder than anything else ever could. Later that night, after everyone had gone, I sat alone in the kitchen where our family crisis had erupted a year earlier. The teller slips that had once been evidence in my defense were now preserved in a memory box, a reminder of how quickly trust can fracture and how painstakingly it must be rebuilt. Our family would never be perfect. The scars of what happened would always be part of our story. But we had found our way through the darkest chapter to something authentic and honest on the other side. In that quiet moment, I understood that sometimes you have to let relationships break completely before they can be rebuilt on a stronger foundation. The painful collapse of our family facade had ultimately made room for something more genuine to grow in its place. And that, I realized, was the truest wealth of all. Have you ever had to stand your ground against people you love? How did you balance protecting yourself while still leaving room for reconciliation? Comment below with your experiences. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more authentic family journeys and share with someone who might need encouragement to stand firm in their truth. Thank you for listening to my story. and I hope it reminds you that sometimes the hardest battles lead to the most meaningful victories.